Hello out there in YouTube land. This is Morrisman. As always, I thank you guys for coming to my channel. Today I'm going to do a video entitled, There's Nothing Wrong With Your Guitar, and then I'm going to respond to the bass tag that Earl from the Maxproud channel has sent me. So let's tackle the first title first. And the reason why I entitled it that is because I got a couple of interesting comments, and I thought that I would expand on those. I get a lot of comments and compliments from my guitar tone, and I appreciate you guys sending me these comments. And I'm asked this a lot. How do you get such a good clean tone? And do you do any modifications to your guitar? And that's an interesting subject because there are a lot of people that's kind of split on that. And I'm just going to give you my take on it because to each his own. You know, whatever you want to do which makes you happy is wonderful. But like I've told you, I've had over 100 guitars in my lifetime. And it's easy to say that I've had more guitars than most people. So I've had guitars that had different types of tones. And my take or opinion on that whole taking out the pickups and replacing them with others, it's kind of a waste of your time because I look at it this way. If you want a certain sound, just find a guitar that has that certain sound instead of trying to play Dr. Frankenstein. Because most of us are just guitar players. We're not tech guys as far as frequencies, pickups, and magnets and all that. You know, I leave that to the guys that know what they're doing. And I'm sure, you know, Fender and Ibanez and Gibson, they hire people that know what they're doing or they train them. So, you know, I just never was one of those people that I'm going to just start gutting out my guitar and putting in all types of stuff. Now, I do some, I would say repairs and not modifications. And what I mean by that is certain brands, sometimes they have defects. Like the Ibanez Roadster 2 series, I've had over like 4 of those types of guitars, the exact same guitar. And what happens on those, on the majority, every one that I had was the toggle switch, it started to get shorted out. You know, you hear that humming sound and it's kind of crackling. You got to hit it sometime to get the sound back. And the problem with that is cheap wiring. They didn't do a good job with the soldering, or the wire that's connected to that toggle switch is so thin that it tends to start to disconnect from the wire disconnect from the toggle switch itself, meaning that the soldering piece starts to give away after, you know, the constant turning of the selector. So that tends to start to get shorted out. And that tends to be a common problem with the Ibanez guitars because I've never had that problem with my J Tersers or my Fenders. Here was another annoying defect on guitars. The Fender Stratocasters have a tendency, I believe it's the second position, could be the third. But when you turn it to the second, third position, you can hear that extra pickup noise. And it's quite loud. You know, it's quite distinctive. You can hear it. So those are usually like defects. But as far as, you know, you get a guitar that sounds good and you want to start taking it apart, because the majority of the guitars nowadays, even the low-end guitars, it's almost becoming obsolete, the low-end guitars. And what I mean by that is, as far as quality is, J Terser guitars are very inexpensive, but they sound really good. I mean, I take them to professional gigs, recording sessions, and they hold up. And, you know, so why would I go out and spend $700, $800, $900, $1,200, $2,000 on a guitar when I can get a $100 guitar to do the same job? Because it's not just about the guitar or your sound, it's changing your strings regularly and what you're coming out of. That's really important because you could have a $2,000 guitar coming out of crap. It's going to sound like crap. You get a $69 guitar going through a good system, it's going to sound pretty decent. So, you know, it's not so much about the guitar, it's about the setup. But, you know, a lot of people kind of, you know, they into this, I want to start putting $300 investment into a $200 guitar. It's just kind of, it's insane to me, you know, because again, the majority of the guitar makers make good guitars, you know, good to go right out the case to play. You know, you might want to change your strings because, you know, the gauge is a little different and you have a certain preference for string gauges, because I do. I try to get the lightest possible, but I do have a few guitars kind of like mid-range because it gives you a different sound and also it feels a little different. It gives you a different tonality. Because 10 years ago, I would just throw extra light strings on all my guitars and they all sound the same. But, you know, as you keep progressing, you start to learn things, you know, and say, hey, leave well enough alone. It sounds good, so I'm not going to change the gauge of the strings and I'm not going to change the strings until I need to change them. But that's my opinion on that whole modifying the pickups and changing the bridge. It's really not necessary because again, there are more than enough guitars out there that you can go to any guitar center or music store and pick out what sounds good to you. So that whole modification thing is, And let me just leave you with this story as far as that. Then I'm going to the tag. When I was a teenager, I was dating this girl, and I let her brother use my Walkman. And Walkmans were just coming out on the market at that time in the late 70s. And I had a pretty cool one. It was a metal one. And I let him borrow it for a day. I came back the next day. I go in the kitchen. He got my Walkman all in pieces on the table. I'm like, what happened to my Walkman? Oh, I dropped it and I'm trying to fix it. I'm like, let me get this straight. The guy who broke it is not trying to fix it. You couldn't even handle just playing it without breaking it. But now you're going to fix it. So I really don't get into that tweaking thing unless I know what I'm doing. And again, that whole modification thing, because all of my guitars are stock. They stock. There's no modifications, as far as how do you get a certain sound or why it sounds so good. Fender make good guitars. Gibson make good guitars. J. Terson make good guitars. Ibanez, they make good guitars. So, there's not a major need to go start, Frankensteining on your guitar, but to each his own. But moving right along, I'm going to respond to Earl on the Maxproud channel. Hello out there, Earl. And his tag consists of 10 questions as far as, First one is, why the bass? Well, I started off as a trumpet player, but then my jaws got sore. I was making a bunch of noise, and then I switched over to bass because I thought it was going to be easier than guitar, which actually it is. So, that's how I started playing bass. The second one is, did you play or start out on the guitar before the bass? Actually, I started out on bass first, but I fell into the guitar because I want to play chords as opposed to just one note at a time. So I switched over to guitar and actually kind of liked it better. The third question is, what is your main instrument right now? It's guitar. But if anybody were to ask me, what do I consider myself, surprisingly is, are you a musician? Are you a songwriter? Are you songwriter? And actually, I would say songwriter, or a guitar player / songwriter / guitar player. So the next one is, do you prefer 4 or 5 or 6 string bass guitars, or even more? And this is an interesting question because I've actually answered this question before. I only want 4. 4 is more than enough for me. When I get into 5 and 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 string guitars, that's just for bass is just too much for the fingers. Your fretboard to be like this. And my biggest complaint already is the fretboard is wide enough with 4 strings. So I really don't want to get into the guitar player's territory because once you start strapping 5, 6, 7, 8 strings on your bass, you kind of more or less now a guitar player. You're no longer really a bass player, but that's just my opinion. The next one, which is number 5, who is your first bass mentor? Very obscure bass player. He used to play with a group called T Connection. His name is Coakley, if I'm not mistaken. They had hits like You Get the Best of My Love, After Midnight, a couple of more, Saturday Night. I love his playing, and the reason why I love his playing is he had a lot of ghost notes and a lot of fills in between the main notes that work. Because a lot of times it's kind of hard to do that without overdoing it. And a lot of people overdo it. They give you too much instead of just pulling back and just sticking to the script. So that's why he was my mentor, because I listened to some of his bass lines, and the ads and the fills are just beautiful. So the next question, which is number 6, what finger playing style do you like? Well, I like playing, with the fingers. I do a little of this a lot sometimes, but my hands tend to get sore when I play bass. So that's why I don't really gig a lot when I'm playing bass. I mainly just play my guitar, but more or less finger style. And a little bit of this sometimes, the thumping Louis Johnson stuff. Number 7, what style of music do you love playing bass to? Actually, all styles. I love R&B, I love pop, jazz, blues, rock, whatever, disco. So, everything is kind of out there as far as playing style. Number 8, you play the upright or the synth bass? Actually, I played upright for a little while. It's just too big and cumbersome. No frets, can't determine where you at. So, I was not extremely good at that. I played well enough, but not really good. But the synth bass used to do a lot of that back in the 80s. I love keyboards. I play piano too, but main instrument is guitar and bass. And the reason why I don't do any keyboard covers is because I don't want to teach anybody wrong techniques, because the way that I play piano is totally unorthodox. You know, I just learned by ear, and later I played a little bit by sheet music. But you know, I don't want to throw anybody off by my weird and not proper technique of playing piano. So number 9 is, do I read or ear or tabulation? Let me first off by saying this. To you beginners, don't rely on that tab nonsense as far as put your finger here and put your finger there. You want to know why you're putting your finger there as opposed to just putting my finger there because the diagram tells me. So I really don't recommend that. And I really don't do anything when it comes to tab because most of them are wrong on the internet anyway. So I play by ear most of the time when I don't have the sheet music, but I'm kind of like 50-50 or maybe 70-40 or whatever, 70-30. You know, I'm able to find sheet music, so I want to play it correctly. So normally I do it with sheet music. If I don't have it, I can do it by ear because my ear is really good. So number 10 is there any instrument that you don't play that you wish you could? Actually, that's violin. And I was actually going to start studying that, but I decided to put that off because I got some other things going as far as my short films, and that's a little more important as far as has more priority. So that's it. And on that note, I'm signing off. Till next time, take care. Thanks.